There's a strange moment that happens in almost every long-term marriage. You can't always pinpoint when it starts, but you know exactly what it feels like. You look across the kitchen table at the person you once couldn't stop thinking about, and instead of butterflies, you feel a mental checklist. Did the mortgage get paid? Did someone call the pediatrician? Whose turn is it to deal with her parents this weekend? Somewhere between bills, chores, schedules, and family responsibilities, love can start feeling like another item on your to-do list. This isn't a sign that the relationship is broken. And it isn't a sign that you married the wrong person. It's something far more common and far more fixable than most couples realize. Psychologists have a name for what's happening, and understanding it is often the first moment a struggling couple actually exhales. Because for the first time, the problem has a shape they can work with instead of a vague, looming sense of failure. Here's the uncomfortable truth researchers keep circling back to. The very system that makes a marriage function well, the division of labor, the coordination, the logistics, is often the same system that quietly erodes romantic connection if nothing is done to protect it. You are not imagining it. You are not falling out of love. You are, more likely, drowning in roles. Think about what a modern marriage actually asks of two people. You are expected to be co-parents, financial partners, household managers, social secretaries, and each other's emotional support system, often while both working full-time jobs. Sociologists call this stacking of duties role overload, a state where the sheer number of responsibilities assigned to a single relationship outpaces the time and emotional energy available to do them well. And marriage, more than almost any other relationship in adult life, is where roles pile up the fastest. When researchers study long-term couples, one pattern shows up again and again. In the early stages of a relationship, almost all of your interactions are what psychologists call discretionary. Chosen freely, with no functional purpose other than connection. You talk for hours about nothing. You go for a walk with no destination. There is no task attached to the time you spend together. But as life adds structure, a shared lease, a wedding, children, aging parents, careers, an increasing share of your interactions become instrumental. That means they exist to accomplish something. Coordinating a pickup, splitting a bill, deciding who's cooking. Necessary, yes, but not designed to build intimacy, just designed to keep the machine running. Here's the part that catches people off guard. Over time, instrumental interaction doesn't just sit alongside emotional connection, it can start replacing it. Not because either partner intends for that to happen, but because the brain treats problem-solving and planning as urgent, and treats emotional bonding as something that can always happen later. Later becomes a very crowded place to live. To understand why this happens, it helps to look at what psychologists call relationship maintenance behaviors. The small, ongoing actions that keep a couple's emotional bond alive. Researchers who study long-term relationships have identified several of these behaviors as especially important. Positivity, meaning warmth and affection in daily interaction. Openness, meaning honest sharing of thoughts and feelings. Assurances, meaning reminders that you're committed and that the relationship matters. And shared tasks, meaning practical cooperation around the house and family. Notice something about that list. Shared tasks, the logistics, the chores, the coordinating, is only one of 4 categories. But in many marriages, especially once children or demanding careers enter the picture, shared tasks quietly swallows almost all of the couple's available time and attention. Positivity, openness, and assurance, the categories most closely tied to feeling loved, often get squeezed into whatever minutes are left over, and frequently there are none left. This is what researchers mean by role overload spilling into romantic connection. It's not that couples stop caring, it's that the architecture of daily life stops leaving room for care to be expressed. A landmark line of research on relationship satisfaction found that couples don't usually drift apart because of one big betrayal. They drift because the ratio of instrumental interaction to emotional interaction quietly tips, month after month, until "we run a household together" has replaced "we are in love" as the operating description of the relationship. There's also a psychological trap hiding inside this pattern, and it's worth naming directly. Task completion feels productive, while emotional connection often feels optional. When you finish the laundry, you get a small hit of accomplishment. The brain registers a completed loop. When you sit and really talk to your partner with no agenda, there's no obvious finish line, so the brain doesn't reward it the same way, even though it's arguably more important. Over years, couples unconsciously train themselves to prioritize the tasks that feel productive over the connection that actually sustains the marriage. This is why so many couples describe feeling like excellent roommates or a great team, but not like romantic partners. Being a great team is genuinely valuable. Coordinated, low-conflict households are a real achievement, and the research is clear that couples who cooperate well on logistics report less daily stress. But teamwork and romance are not the same psychological experience, and one cannot substitute for the other indefinitely. A marriage running purely on instrumental cooperation is stable in the way a well-run business is stable. It can function for years without anyone feeling particularly close. The good news buried in all of this research is that role overload is not a personality flaw or a compatibility problem. It's a structural issue. And structural issues respond to structural solutions. You don't need to fall back in love. You need to rebuild the conditions that let love be felt, even while the logistics of adult life keep demanding your attention. So, how do you actually do that? Psychologists who study long-term relationship health tend to point to a few specific, learnable shifts. Not vague advice like communicate more, but concrete structural changes to how a couple organizes their shared life. The first is what we might call separating the logistics channel from the connection channel. Right now, in most overloaded marriages, every conversation is at risk of becoming a task conversation. You sit down to relax, and within minutes, you're discussing the car's oil change or a school form that needs signing. This happens because couples only have one shared communication space, so everything pours into it. Relationship researchers recommend deliberately creating two distinct channels. One is for logistics, a specific time, ideally short, where you run through the household admin. The calendar, the bills, the schedule, the coordination. Many couples find it useful to treat this almost like a brief business meeting, even scheduling it, so that it has a clear beginning and end. The second channel is protected time, where logistics are explicitly off limits. Not, we'll try not to talk about chores. An actual agreement that if a task comes up during protected time, it gets written down for the logistics meeting, instead of discussed on the spot. This single boundary does something powerful psychologically. It signals to both partners' nervous systems that this time is safe from becoming another obligation, which is what allows genuine warmth to surface. The second core technique is what researchers call intentional bids for connection. This concept comes from decades of observational research on couples, which found that throughout any given day, partners make small bids for each other's attention. A comment, a glance, a shared observation. And the way those bids are received predicts relationship satisfaction more strongly than almost anything else studied. Couples in role overload often unconsciously stop making bids altogether because bidding requires a small amount of discretionary energy that logistics has already consumed. The fix isn't grand romantic gestures. It's reintroducing small, low-effort bids on purpose. A 2-minute check-in with no agenda, a text during the day that has nothing to do with pickup schedules, noticing something and saying it out loud instead of letting it pass. The goal is quantity of small moments, not the size of any single one. The third technique is protecting couple time the same way you'd protect any other non-negotiable commitment. This sounds simple, and that's exactly why it gets skipped. Most couples say they want more connected time together, but they never put it on the calendar the way they would a dentist appointment or a work deadline, which means it competes with everything else and consistently loses. Researchers who study relationship maintenance find that couples who treat connection time as a scheduled, protected block, even just 20 or 30 minutes a few times a week, report significantly higher relationship satisfaction than couples who wait for connection to happen spontaneously. Spontaneity is lovely when life is light. Under role overload, spontaneity simply doesn't survive contact with a full calendar. What ties these three techniques together is a single underlying shift in mindset. Stop expecting emotional connection to survive as a leftover of your logistical life, and start treating it as its own category that deserves its own space. A marriage under role overload isn't failing because the partners don't love each other. It's failing to make room for that love to be felt because every available minute has been claimed by something that felt more urgent. This distinction matters more than it might seem. Practical teamwork and emotional intimacy are both real forms of care. Showing up, handling responsibilities, being reliable is a form of love, not the absence of it. But it's a different psychological experience than warmth, curiosity, and closeness, and the brain doesn't automatically translate one into the other. A partner who does the dishes every night without being asked is showing love through competence and reliability. A partner who sits down, makes eye contact, and asks a genuine question about your day is showing love through presence. Long-term relationship satisfaction depends on both. But most overloaded couples are running almost entirely on the first and wondering why they feel distant, despite doing everything right. The reassuring part of the research is this: connection doesn't require a dramatic overhaul of your life. It requires small, protected pockets of time where logistics are not allowed to intrude, and a willingness to keep making small bids for each other even when the day has been exhausting. Couples who make these shifts consistently, not perfectly, just consistently, tend to describe a noticeable change within weeks, not years. The feeling of being teammates who happen to be married starts to soften back into something that feels more like partnership with warmth underneath it. If you've recognized your own relationship somewhere in this video, the mental checklist replacing the spark, the sense that you're excellent collaborators but distant lovers, take that recognition as useful information, not as a verdict on your marriage. Role overload is common precisely because modern life asks so much of two people trying to build something together. Naming it is often the first step toward loosening its grip. If this kind of research-backed look at relationships and the mind is something you find valuable, consider subscribing to the channel. We break down what psychology actually knows about love, connection, and the everyday patterns that shape our closest relationships. No fluff, no cliches, just what the research really shows. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.